Welcome back to Palestine Bookshelf. I'm Stephen Heiner, and today I'm going to be reviewing Palestine by Joe Sacco. I'll zoom in a little bit here on the camera so you can get a sense of the comic book nature of this. This is the second one of Joe's books that I reviewed, but it was the first one that he wrote. And in it, I would argue that unlike Footnotes in Gaza, which was great, which was a specific historic investigation into some murders, massacres that happened in the 1950s, this is more of a tableau of Palestinian society in general. And there's some self-awareness of it. In one point, Sacco takes a picture and says this might be a good broad for the comic book. So he has a sense of what he's writing, but he's also brutally honest and vulnerable about himself, even if it makes him look bad. And he colors in the edges of the stories we know historically. So, for example, if we read about a village that gets depopulated and cleansed in 1948, and we get a name, this gives us the stories of the people. This gives us even more detail. And I say color, obviously, it's in black and white, but what I mean is the color in the sense of finding out who these people are. If you're, as I said, if you're reading an article about a house being raided, in these pages we're gonna meet that family and we're gonna hear their stories ourselves. And one of the things about the medium is you're able to communicate many ideas quickly. And as I did in my review for Footnotes of Gaza, I'm just going to show you some of these and try to give you a sense of what's going on. And so you can see here Arthur Balfour, sipping his tea, referring to, a land without people, people without land, a home for the Jewish people. You see the tanks. You see that quote, "a land without people for a people without land." I think that's Herzl. So you're getting a lot of ideas given to you quickly, but in a way that sticks with you. And I think that's part of the beauty of this is, in a sense, people can be ambushed by facts. You don't really know necessarily what you're dealing with if you've never read nonfiction comics before. Here's another. It gives you a real sense of the dynamism of a protest. So you can see that. See the pictures of people cut together along with the words. The kids are running, hurling stones over the bus, rat-a-tat-tat-tat. So you get all the sense of movement and action and what he's observing as a journalist, a photojournalist watching and trying to process things. There's so much that is captured in that yeah, I could show you a video of that, but when I show you this tableau and show you this movement and show you everything that's going on, in a sense it almost penetrates more deeply, and it gives you more time to look back and just look at freeze frame moments. We don't often watch videos and then freeze it and look at things. Part of the nature of the medium of videos is we watch it continuously, but when you're looking at just frames, you're able to pause and look and take things in more deeply. So here's another thing that we would see all the time is he would go into people's houses and they'd offer him tea and coffee, and you'd hear their stories about what they went through, about going to prison or getting work or their family troubles or medical things or dealing with the soldiers, dealing with checkpoints, but hearing them in individual conversations and individual circumstances. And unlike Footnotes in Gaza, which is entirely focused in Gaza as it should be, this book moves between. So we have East Jerusalem, we have the West Bank, we have Gaza, we have some nice homes in Gaza, families who have a bit more money, and then we are in refugee camps. And so he's giving us all these different things. And he also, as I say, is willing to look at himself critically. So he gives us a moment where he goes to a hospital and people are pulling him. Here, come, we want you to see these wounded people. You can see him being jerked forward. It says, we want you to take photos of these people. And so they give him a keffiyeh, for example, this kid, and here, I'm going to take a picture of you. And then other people, yes, sure. It says, bed number 2 passes the keffiyeh. Okay, say cheese. And then this man in so much pain, and his mother's nearby. And it says, small intestine and liver shot up. We get the lowdown from his mother. Dry blood on his pillowcase. He's covered all the way up to his neck. He don't look so good. Ask her if I can take his picture, he says. This is him. Mom asks her son, La. No in Arabic. Okay, yo capisco. Say no more. A private wound. You want to see children? He says. And then he takes him there, and you see these children, multiple fractures. Photo. Someone drapes a keffiyeh on her head, pulls back the blanket to show her ankle to pelvis cast. She laughs at the flash. Now she's chattering. What does she say? She wants you to take another picture. And these are right across from each other. So you see this great pain and shame from an adult who's deeply injured and wounded, a child who is also wounded from a pelvis down to a calf wound, and also they put a keffiyeh on her, but she wants you to take another picture. So things are complicated, but he's showing that to us. He's not hiding it. He's not trying to airbrush it and make everything perfect. He's giving you real life and the real story. So part of that real story, too, is seeing what the hierarchy is like. So you see here a young man showing his identity card and then referring to his friend's identity card. Okay? And I'll read that. You can see there's a lot of text here. So I'm going to read that to you. He says, green card, and he doesn't speak very much English, so this is all the English he has. Green card, intifada, says my new pal, waving his card. Orange card, no intifada, he says, holding up his friends. Orange card retreats with a red face, while green card beams proudly. I beam back, out of sympathy, really, because I've got a bad feeling about a dude without discretion like this. He's destined for a casualty appendix, I'm thinking. He's probably got an appointment with a serious bullet. But notice that idea of shame, because, so the reason for the green card, orange card, if you had been arrested, then your identity card would be reclassified by the Israelis with a different color, so they would know you were quote-unquote troublemaker. And the friend is embarrassed that he doesn't have, you could say, that badge of honor yet. And you could see this hierarchy. He's trying to show the journalist, here, we are the ones who are participating. We're the ones who are part of the uprising. And as you can see, you have this text right next to these types of what you would consider standard comics. And so don't think of the entire, this collects, I think, 9 or 10 individual comic books and binds them all into one. So don't think of it as one particular way of comics or one way that you might think of comics. This is really, as I said, if you've never read a nonfiction comic book, you've never seen anything like this before. So here, the settlers in Hebron, which I've told you a bit before, having talked to the Palestinians there in Hebron, what they've dealt with myself. You can see here an image, get out of your houses, dogs. This is not fictional. This is exactly what they do. They go around the settlers, fire guns, terrorize the Palestinians there, and are basically trying to get them to leave. And they don't understand that the Palestinians are not just going to do that. A group of cars drove down the main street honking horns. The first car stopped and 2 settlers got out with guns and fired 4 times in the air. Get out of your houses, dogs. And they yelled bad words about prostitutes, sex words in Arabic and Hebrew. There were nearly 20 cars and maybe 40 settlers, both sexes. I heard a child calling for his father in Hebrew. They started smashing the windows of the home across the street. Another group came at this house. I turned off the lights and TV and drew the curtains. As I was locking the inner door, the first stones came through the window. The attack lasted 15 minutes, and in the morning we found 60 stones. My parents were in their bedroom during the attack. My mother was nearly unconscious from being scared. When I started talking to her, she had no ability to reply. So he's able to capture in those images what we get through our news reports. And as I said, it's different between reading a couple paragraphs in a news report and seeing just a few images illustrating the horror that these people are having to go through. And once again, giving you better and deeper insight into what's happening. By the time you see this review, I'll have done a review on the Btselem report on Israeli prisons. This is many years before that report. So that report was made in 2024 about conditions between 2022 and 2024. But you can see it lines up, that treatment lines up with with treatment from years before, because this comic book came out in the 90s. And there are different men here. This is Ansar 3, that was a prison, talking about different things that they experienced. And I'll just read a couple of them here. You can see they give accounts. It was during the Iron Fist period, during the policy of broken bones. This was something that Sharon had said, that he wanted to break their will during the First Intifada. We wanted to break their bones. We were blindfolded and handcuffed, and they beat us on the bus. When we got out, we had to pass between two lines of soldiers who beat us. Two prisoners had arms broken. Then they ordered us to make animal noises, and noises like a train. They beat us until we agreed to do this. Soldiers were having a barbecue nearby, including women soldiers. Here's another account. I spent 18 days in Daria before receiving an administrative detention order for 6 months. I was placed in a room of 4 by 6 meters with about 40 persons. In 10 days, they only allowed us out of the room twice for 15 minutes each time. They took us from our rooms and they put us on 5 buses. There were more than 100 of us. We were afraid. Some were crying on the buses. We thought we were being deported to Jordan or Lebanon. Being stuck in a yard with 250 guys might seem like hell to some people, with only 3 toilets and hot water once every 3 weeks. We were in charge of distributing our food ourselves, and there was only 1 plate for every 4 detainees. So we had to be organized. We formed committees to organize these things. Prisoners working in the kitchen would bring the tea in a big pot. The tea committee had to make sure that distribution of the tea was fair, so that no one complained, and fast, so that the tea was served hot. The tea committee served everyone once, and then began serving from the beginning of the line again until the leftover tea was gone. The tea monitor in the tent would take note of who was next in line for tea so that he would be served first next time. There's a problem the moment you start goofing with fairness. Prison is a small world where a cup of tea is something, a piece of soap is something. And as for edifying activities, you can see them here teaching each other in classrooms. If we wanted to get together for a talk, the education committee would decide on the speakers, which tent, and how many people could attend. A few people would be sent to walk along the barbed wire to take the attention of the guards elsewhere. We held lectures on ecology, philosophy, Einstein, the breakup of the Soviet Union. Twice, I lectured on the Israeli peace movement. There were courses in English and Hebrew. In 3 months, 14 persons were taught how to read. Once again, this never say die attitude of the Palestinians. You're in prison? Okay, I guess I'm going to have to learn how to read now. Every new prisoner entering the compound had to affiliate himself with a faction, not for political reasons, but for purposes of organization. This did not imply he was a member. So factions, PFLP, the DFLP, Fatah, Hamas, he had to answer to the group for certain responsibilities, and the group became responsible for his rights and duties. No one was allowed to speak to new prisoners when they came in, so there would be no question of recruiting. The prisoner would be taken to a tent where a committee of 4 would ask him to choose a political faction. The only disadvantage to the system was that it was highly centralized. We weren't allowed watches, so we decided to leave our tents during prayers. After the third Allah Akbar, all of us went out and stood in line for 1 minute. This was to commemorate someone who they knew had died, Abu Jihad, who had been a member of Fatah. Anyway, there's more of this, and some again, as we've always seen in these exchanges, sometimes an Israeli guard shows some compassion, but he's usually moved away because we can't have that. I mean, that's a terrible thing to treat people like they're humans. We can't allow that. And then this is another imprisonment, but it's from start to finish. So they wake up your family and take you from your house. And there's this dark border around to give you the sense of night. And he's blindfolded. He's made to sit in a chair. They take him, and then they say, "You're suspected of belonging to an illegal organization." "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not a member of anything. I don't have anything to say. If you want to confess, okay. If not, we'll do something else." And then once again, they blindfold him, put him in a chair, make it more uncomfortable. Then they start to tie him. Then they start pushing him around. One time I heard someone talking. I felt once the police come in and hit somebody. Tapes were playing from speakers very loud, Hebrew songs, English, some Arabic. They played 3 or 4 cassettes, the same songs, 24 hours a day. You take him off, you can see he's a bit disheveled now. Are you ready to talk? After 30 hours from my arrest, the police came for me. They took the sack off my head. My hands were swollen. The color of my skin was reddish blue. I was taken to a court. My lawyer was present, but I wasn't allowed to speak to him. Your Honor, we believe the suspect belongs to an illegal organization. His lawyer responds, that's not true. What evidence do you have? Other lawyer, we found documents in his home. He is phoning the terrorist leadership abroad. We found this list of phone numbers. And then he says, this is the number of my brother-in-law, other relatives of my wife, where I work, a hospital, numbers of my relatives. The judge could read Arabic. He looked at the list himself. Your Honor, we need 15 more days to find additional evidence. Your Honor, there is no evidence. My client should be released immediately. I'll extend custody an additional 8 days. And again, it goes through the whole process. They change my position every 4 or 5 hours. Stand like this, don't move. And then they come in and move him. After 4 days without sleep, I begin to have hallucinations. He says, my daughter is dead. And he sees his daughter there. My brother is sitting next to me. My brother is dead. My father is dead. My uncle is dead. And can't see this very well, but there's a casket there, then 2 caskets. My mother is sick. She is in hospital. My mother is arrested. I had hallucinations. Ready to confess? No, there's a pain in my chest. Where do you feel the pain? My chest. Take this pill, probably a Tylenol. I was tied even tighter than before. Even though the doctor says he has low blood pressure, you should loosen the bonds on his wrists. Then they tighten the bonds on his wrists. More of the same. They go back to court. The judge agrees to another 7 days. We haven't found any new documents, Your Honor, but we'll have our evidence if you give us another 15 days. Judge gives another 7 days. He goes through more of this. And as I say, it really hits because you get this sense of the walls closing in. The way that he's framed this, it's really, really beautiful. At my 3rd court appearance, the judge decided I should be held an additional 4 days. After 4 or 5 hours of policeman, the policeman asked if I wanted a bath. Here's some clothes from your family. It was the first time I'd washed in 15 days. After 2 hours in the chair, I was taken to a nice cell to sleep. I was allowed to sleep. On the 19th day, I had another court appearance. What did the Israelis say? Your Honor, we need another 10 days to gather evidence. His lawyer again, Your Honor, there is no evidence. There has been no confession. My client should be released today. Your Honor, we are close to getting the information we need. The judge decided I should be released. At 3 o'clock, I was released. And you can see him blending out into the crowd there. And what we see there, again, is an inability for the Israelis to admit they're wrong. They just have to keep lying. We picked up the wrong person. Give us a few more days. We'll find the evidence. After 20 days, they're so incompetent, they can't find any evidence because they can't admit we picked up the wrong guy and we just wanted to torture him. Palestinian joke. And this is something I've talked about before. The Palestinians have a great sense of humor. Stop me if you've heard this one. I heard this joke twice. 3 secret agents were walking along the edge of a forest. One was CIA, one was KGB, one was Shin Bet. If you don't know Shin Bet, this is the Israeli intelligence service. They saw a rabbit running into the trees, and they decided to see how fast each of them could capture it. The CIA man went first and returned with the rabbit in 10 minutes. They let the rabbit go again. The KGB agent returned with the rabbit in only 5 minutes. The Shin Bet fellow was not impressed. That's nothing. Let the rabbit go again. The Shin Bet officer went after the rabbit. The other 2 agents waited. 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes, 20, 40. Something's gone wrong. They entered the forest to look for their Israeli colleague. I'm sorry I'm laughing because I know the end of this joke. They walked for a long time, going deeper and deeper into the woods. Finally, they heard noise, yelling and screaming, and they followed the sound to a clearing. The Shin Bet officer is beating a donkey. And he's saying, admit you're the rabbit. Admit you're the rabbit. And once again, you see the Palestinians taking humor in something very dark. They're the ones who have been tortured. They're the ones who have been the donkey being slapped and being told that they're actually criminals. And yet they're able to invent this whole joke, one that Joe was told twice by different people. And here, now I'm repeating it to you, and so you can appreciate a bit of Palestinian humor as well. The last thing we'll look at, and as I said, I had to kind of choose my battles about what I talk about. I wanted to end on a lighter note because I think once again this underlines the hidden power of the Palestinians as their young people, and they have hope and they have curiosity and they don't know what they don't know. Even though they've had to grow up so much faster than any of us could ever imagine, they still keep pushing forward. And here, this is a 10-year-old girl, and they're sitting around, and here's Joe up here, and everyone's sitting around, and she's on his right. The niece is staring at me. She's 10 years old and fascinated. Sameh translates. What does the water taste like in your country? Is it better water here or there? And again, that's because she's used to sometimes tasting brackish water because it's not treated, because in Gaza things are very bad with the water. It's some of the most polluted water that humans drink. Do the women wear pants outside like they do in Egypt? Can a man have two wives? Do you have the soldiers and the Jews and Fatah and the Popular Front in your country? Here she's just trying to understand the world and overlay it somewhere else. When I was in Egypt, I saw soldiers too. Don't you have soldiers in your country? Do they shoot the people? I've heard Christians eat snails. Do you eat snails? Which country has better food? What do the soldiers do to the people in your country? What about feasts? Do you slaughter lambs and give meat to the poor? What about your mom and dad? You live alone? Do you have brothers, sisters, just the two of you? What is her name? Why don't you have Fatah and the Popular Front in your country? When will you leave? And the grandmother is back here. And she says, if he comes back in 2 years, you'll be a woman. Would you marry him? And then she says, why not? And he says, I'm still blushing. I liked it when I asked her what she would study if she goes to university, and she said, the foreigner. A girl like that, if I were her parents, I would buy her a computer, says Sameh, who was his host. But so much wonderful. And I suppose I'm in a better mood at the end of this because in Footnotes from Gaza, Sacco is investigating two massacres that the IDF perpetrated in Gaza in the 50s. And it was a fantastic book, and I loved it. And I'll link to I'll put a card up and I'll put a link in the description for that review. But what's different about this, as I said, it's a tableau of all of Palestinian life. So you have the highs, you have the lows, and all throughout it, you have a portrait of a people who are resilient, engaging in the sumud. They are not going to give up, no matter how hard the Israelis try to make them give up. They don't realize that every time they push, the Palestinians simply get stronger. We saw it happen after the ceasefire, after January 2024. We watched this impressive and inspiring march of the Palestinians back north, to the north of Gaza, back to their homes. They will not be beaten. And this is a great introduction to them as a people in a visual form and a way to maybe break up the reports and the documentaries and the texts that we so often cover in this channel. If you'd like to get a copy of the book, that's one way that you can support our channel. There's a link in the description. If you'd like to thank me for this video particularly, there's a link to PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee. You can send a link, you can send a donation that way. If you want to support our work on an ongoing basis, there's Patreon or YouTube membership. There are links for that as well. You can nominate a book to be reviewed from my Amazon wish list. These are books that I know I'd like to cover in the future. So in a way, you could sponsor that video by buying the book for me and sending it my way. A reminder that proceeds from all these different channels, the profits will go towards the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. There's a link to their website in the description as well. They help Palestinian children who could not otherwise get medical care get the medical care that they need. And you can contribute to their work directly, or you can contribute indirectly by supporting our work. Like, subscribe, share this with people who are open-minded to hearing the story of the Palestinians from people who've actually gone there and gotten to know them instead of just believing whatever the mainstream media lies to you about. As always, until next time, enjoy your reading.